I mentioned what Trump claimed on January 7th, because there was so much pressure at the time and he was facing an impeachment that might have resulted in disqualifying him from running again and potential indictment as well. I want to show the violence and what he said.
Like all Americans, I am outraged by the violence, lawlessness, and mayhem. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. And to those who broke the law, you will pay.
How does that stack up to what he's doing now?
Well, I think he's changed his tune in saying, to those who engaged in lawlessness and violence, welcome to the slush fund. Each of you should get $2 million or more, as Terrio has indicated he's going to seek. So that was at a time, remember, when even Mitch McConnell and Nancy Mace were raising objections to the failure to allow the peaceful transfer of government and the obvious insurrection that was underway. He had to quell those passions in an effort to avoid impeachment. And sadly now, what we're seeing is, an audacity and a scale of corruption that never been seen before in America, unknown to many people other than the Putins, Idi Amins, and others of the world who have looted their countries for their own personal benefit. And that's what's going on now between Trump and Blanche.
Yeah, and your view of the way the acting Attorney General Blanche is leading this?
Criminal.
Because?
Well, it's totally lawless. He's no idiot. I mean, and Blanche doesn't have the excuse of having been an ideologue like Bondi or Stephen Miller or others. Blanche was once a decent lawyer. This is all basically just personal ambition, enriching himself and trying to empower himself. And he found out, I think, that Trump believes the price of making him Attorney General is $2 billion, and he readily handed it out to him.
The reporting we have off Capitol Hill today does show more opposition to this than usual, than some other Trump efforts, including the so-called enemies list, which targeted all these people. And so, given that you've been in that White House role as a lawyer, where you keep an eye on the Congress and other pushback, how do you think that plays? Do you think it's hit the type of pitch yet where the practical people at the White House and DOJ say, "Oh, we might actually lose this thing," or what's your view of it?
Well, I think the mere fact that Blanche canceled his trip to Minnesota to rush up to the Hill and expanded the list of potential claimants under the slush fund to include Republican senators whose phone records, not actual conversations, not anything private or otherwise not appropriately subpoenaed, was subpoenaed during the 1-6 investigation to determine merely to whom Trump and Meadows were speaking as the insurrection was well underway. Now they're going to be allowed to dip into the fund along with the Proud Boys and the many other right-wing and dangerous people that Trump wants to take care of to make sure that they'll always be there for him, particularly on Election Day in November.
Yeah. And we reported this week that the wider process is Trump trying to rebuild and extend some of the failed efforts from the original insurrection. He ran into pushback famously from his vice president, the AG, and now, as we've just discussed, he's got different people in those roles. I want to contrast on at least the issue of the facts of the election, Bill Barr, to the sycophants surrounding him today. This is what we had from Barr before.
I repeatedly told the president in no uncertain terms that I did not see evidence of fraud. I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bull.
Today, a grand jury sitting in the Eastern District of North Carolina returned an indictment against James Comey on 2 counts.
I love working for President Trump.
I love you, sir.
If there is a Republican loss in 28, say Vance or someone allied with Trump, and Trump is demanding Blanche do the things that Barr wouldn't, how concerned should we be that he would go further, and what, as a society, do we do about that?
If the Attorney General is going to give away $2 billion worth of taxpayer money, I think we should be very concerned. There's no bar to what he will stoop to in service of the president to whom he has surrendered his fealty, unlike other attorney generals whose fealty was always to the Constitution.
Yeah. Right. And that sort of takes it forward into everyone understanding what we're dealing with. In the old days, the media gives some deference to what comes out of the DOJ. The Wall Street business elites who matter say, oh, well, if the DOJ said this, it means that. And now that seems upside down.
There's no architectural plans. There is no environmentals. There's no engineering. There's no sense of, when we ask, how did it happen to cost exactly $1 billion?
I don't support taxpayer money going to it.
It could cost a lot less. It could cost a lot more. I just don't get it.
The sound you hear is a Republican pushing back on the panoply of Trump plots and efforts to spend money. We're back with White House veteran Ty Cobb. Ty, as you know, nowadays people sound off in all sorts of different ways. And one interesting thing with TikTok is people are just venting. It's not like an op-ed that went through an editor and 5 drafts. People are just sounding off, and more Americans have heard about and seem concerned with the various corruption and spending. Take a look.
$1.7 billion taxpayer dollars that this man is literally trying to swindle.
The way he did it is even more corrupt than the fund itself.
The blatant end run around the Constitution.
This is going on while they started an endless war in Iran, while they can't supply health care, but they have money to line this reflecting pool.
He's so focused on the ballroom. Maybe he should have just gone to interior design school.
Oh, what a big boy playing with his toys.
Donald Trump's arch that he's trying to put in D.C. is a 250-foot middle finger to veterans.
Your view of sort of where the public outrage fits into what is a lot of corruption and spending problems.
It's shocking. I mean, we've never in our lifetimes or in the history of the Republic seen a level of corruption at this audacious scale. The people that are now paying attention, I think that's great. I hope he's finally crossed a line that even Congress may push back on, and that more Republicans will find a spine or some character and do what they swore to do when they took their oaths. But I don't think we can count on that. Keep in mind, after the 1/6 insurrection, Republicans were initially upset, but they got over that, embraced Trump, and sadly 77 million Americans, notwithstanding Trump's attempted seditious, treasonous exercise, voted him back into office. So I don't think anybody should be surprised that a convicted criminal of his ilk and lack of character, his malignant narcissism and dementia, is running amok with no impulse control, and many people who are ambitious trying to serve him. I think it's good that people are starting to pay attention. Everybody should pay attention. The Republic is in severe danger, and all our taxpayer money is at risk. If he can take $2 billion under this pretext, he can take as much as he wants, and he will.
Yeah. Right. And there's different ways to mount these arguments. And when people get exhausted or cynical, they say, well, what does it even matter? But the fact that this fund is vulnerable to so many different points, that it's anti-police, that it's dangerous to democracy, that it undercuts the congressional funding prerogative, which some Republicans care about for narrower reasons, that seems to have added, added weight on the boat, if you will. And Trump, you mentioned his mental state. I mean, here he was in the Oval. He's not exactly pushing back on whether he controls Republicans. There was this exchange.
There is some backlash from Senate Republicans to some of the other priorities, the ballroom and that anti-weaponization fund. Are you losing control of the Senate Republicans?
I don't know. I really don't know.
He doesn't know, and at times it seems like he doesn't care. The war is a very serious matter. The fund is something you might just evaporate under pressure. But what they have in common was no actual meaningful effort to present, even to his own party, let alone his constitutional obligations, to explain it to the public in advance. He doesn't seem to care about that or feel any compunction, Ty.
Trump doesn't believe that he's accountable to anybody. He believes he can do anything he wants, and he does. Both the war, contrary to the advice of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and this completely lawless exercise. Blanche, can't avoid criticism here either, because he violated virtually every ethical rule under Rule 1 of the Rules of Professional Conduct. He has no business doing this in a circumstance where his former client is the alleged adversary in a case where he's representing the Justice Department. Trump will find people to do whatever he wants, and as we know from his termination of Bondi, as we know from his attacks on Senator Cassidy, he doesn't really care who he leaves in his wake, and temporary loyalists, unless they can get the job done.
In the aftermath of January 6th, then President Donald Trump faced enormous political pressure, including the looming threat of impeachment and potential criminal indictment. At the time, he issued a public condemnation of the Capitol riot, stating that those who engaged in violence and lawlessness did not represent the country and would face legal consequences. It was a message shaped by necessity. Even prominent Republicans, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, were openly critical of the failures that allowed the peaceful transfer of power to be disrupted. But observers note that the tone from the former president has shifted dramatically. What was once a condemnation of those involved in the January 6th events has, according to critics, transformed into a political embrace. Reports indicate that the Justice Department, under Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, is now pursuing a compensation fund that could provide payments of $2 million or more to individuals previously convicted or charged in connection with the Capitol breach. Legal analysts have described the move as deeply troubling, arguing it represents an unprecedented use of government resources for what they characterize as political patronage rather than legitimate legal remedy. The decision by Blanche to cancel travel and instead rush to Capitol Hill to expand the list of potential fund recipients has drawn sharp criticism. Critics point out that the expanded eligibility now includes Republican senators whose phone records, not private communications, but basic call logs, were subpoenaed during the January 6th congressional investigation. The subpoenas were issued simply to determine who was in contact with Trump and his then Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, as events unfolded that day. The situation has drawn comparisons to the tenure of former Attorney General William Barr, who publicly and repeatedly told Trump that there was no credible evidence of widespread election fraud and refused to endorse claims that the 2020 election had been stolen. Barr described much of the post-election narrative pushed by the White House as without factual basis. In contrast, critics argue that today's Justice Department leadership has shown no similar willingness to operate independently of the White House. Legal commentators and former officials have raised broader constitutional concerns, noting that the compensation fund appears to bypass Congress's authority over federal spending. The arrangement, they argue, sets a dangerous precedent. If billions in taxpayer funds can be directed toward one group under these circumstances, there is little structural barrier preventing similar actions in the future on a larger scale. Public reaction has been notable. Across social media platforms, Americans from various political backgrounds have voiced concern not only about the scale of the spending, but about what they see as a pattern of prioritizing political loyalty over institutional accountability. Some Senate Republicans have also signaled unease, questioning large expenditures, including separate proposals for a ceremonial arch in Washington, D.C. Analysts say the question now is whether congressional pushback will prove more than rhetorical and whether enough lawmakers will act on their oversight responsibilities before these financial and legal maneuvers become further entrenched.